Okay, so today's lecture is going to be on dealing with professional attackers, part 1. It's going to be a multi-part series. Okay, so let's get a quick overview as always. So there are several key attributes and tactics that differentiate a professional attacker from an amateur attacker. In this lecture series, I'll break down these factors and how to prepare for them and possibly counter them should you encounter professional attackers. So in this lecture, I'm just going to talk about attributes that make a professional attacker. I'm going to talk about tactics and other things in future lectures. So the attributes of a professional attacker, I've got 8 of them today. So the first one is common sense. Okay, big difference between an amateur attacker and a professional attacker is common sense. A professional attacker is going to have common sense. They're going to employ tactics and techniques and equipment that makes sense. And I'll break down later, why that's such an important point to make. They are immune to an emotional negotiation. So, begging for mercy, appealing to their morality or their sympathy is not necessarily going to be effective because they're going to have some pretty powerful incentive structures acting on them. They're resistant to pain. I have to make this a whole point because there's a lot of self-defense systems out there that talk about using pressure points and pain to save your life in a life or death situation. And again, against some Joe Blow who's half-ass trying to fight you or half-ass trying to grope you, that might work. But against a professional who has planned out their attack and is committed to their goal, ain't gonna happen. They're effectively fit. Not necessarily an elite athlete, but they are going to be fit enough to complete the task at hand. They're at least partially trained. Again, may not be elite, but they're definitely going to know how to use the tactics they're doing, or the physical techniques, or the equipment they brought with them. Adequately equipped. Professional attacker is going to bring a gun to a gunfight. An amateur trying to mug you at fist point is an amateur. A professional is going to bring backup and weapons, and they're going to be ready for the task at hand. They're resistant to retreat, so threatening them with loss or a bad thing happening later is not going to cut it. And of course, the last one is commitment to the objective, right? Professionals have standards, and professional attackers have come into their act with a specific goal in mind, and they are committed to that goal. So let's talk about common sense first. So professional attackers will make tactical decisions that make common sense. So here are some examples of professional attackers versus some of the bullshit you'll see. So like gun disarms. If you go on YouTube or the internet, you'll see a whole bunch of gun disarms, but a majority of them are going to be from when the gun is at your chest or at your head or at your back or in contact with your body or very close to your body. Well, anybody with common sense knows that a gun is a ranged weapon, and I'm going to be about the distance I am here to this camera with a gun. I'm not going to get up and, make contact and give, the person who'd be at the camera a chance to snatch the gun from me. I'm going to use distance. The gun is going to be out of your reach. So a lot of these gun disarms you see on YouTube, actually some of them are mechanically sound and they would work, but only if your opponent was a moron that got within an inch of you and let you touch their gun, right? Anybody with common sense, those aren't going to work. Okay, same thing with jumping people, right? You'll see YouTube videos, people, beat up 3 guys, right? 1 on 3 and the one wins, right? But if you watch the people jumping them, you never see them use common sense and say, hey, they have a limited number of limbs. If we all attack at the same time and grab him, he can't stop all of us and take him down in unison. If you see that, you wouldn't see one dude beating up 3, 4 guys, right? Only amateurs will fight one at a time and kind of sit back scared, but a professional, if they're jumping you, all 5 guys are grabbing you at the same time, right? Purposely to overload your ability to defend. Okay, so some counters to enemies who have common sense. Match their common sense, right? Engage in training and train with instructors that factor for resistance. So a great system that does this well is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if they teach you an arm bar from off your back, it's not just, okay, you do this and this and this and this. It's okay, you do this and this, but if they pull the arm out, you do this. You go to the next move. And if they counter that, you go to the next move. Or if you feel that they're starting to, clear their elbow, abandon and go to something else, right? They don't just teach you a move like some of the phony baloney martial arts, or if they grab your shoulder, you go here, then here, then here, then here, and practice that on your non-resisting partner. They actually factor in, okay, if they try to stop this technique, you can do this instead. Or if you're going for the technique and they're starting to do this, it's not going to work. So they actually factor in resistance with their techniques and chain them together, and that's why it's a very good fighting system. Okay, they're immune to emotional negotiation. So as part of common sense, professional attackers will be aware of the emotional and moral issues with their actions and will already be conditioned, indoctrinated, or incentivized to finish the task anyways. So common sense and conditioning, indoctrination, and incentivization are going to be common themes in these attributes. So kind of pay attention to this. Okay, so an example of this one right here, this is going to be indoctrination. So inferiority through isms. A lot of cultures or religions or racism, xenophobia, whatever it is, a lot of the indoctrination is teaching people within a certain group or culture that people outside of the culture are less than human. Just a common thing, right? Right? In every side of a civil war, right? You have a civil war. One group of people believe that, this group is less than human, or again, slavery, right? With slavery, right? They convinced white people that black people were inferior, and that justified all the horrible things they did to them. So again, you've got isms, right? Different religions, and then the next one is threat and reward, or threat-based reward. So that's an interesting one. So threat and reward is pretty simple, right? You either do this or you get threatened, right? There's going to be a consequence to it. Reward is simple. You do this and I'll reward you for it. But the big one, the most powerful one, is the combination of the two, the threat-based reward, which is pretty much money. So how the threat-based reward of money works, let's say the cartel is sent to kill you, right? And you want to beg with them and plead with them. But again, right, they're doing it for money. They're getting paid money. But a lot of times those guys who work for gang members and stuff like that, they come from an environment where that's the only bit in town to get good, pay, to get good pay that they can live off of. Or another one is Nazi Germany, right? We ask, well, why did the Nazi soldiers join Hitler's regime? Well, at the time, with hyperinflation in Germany, being a soldier was the only bit in town that you could have 3 meals and a place to sleep. No other job or entry-level job paid enough money with hyperinflation for you to make a living for yourself and your family. So with how money works is that the economic environment you're in basically forces you to get money, right? If you don't get money, you don't eat, your family doesn't eat, you don't have a place to sleep. And then, right, so that creates the threat of you need money, and then cartels and whatnot will come in and offer that money. So you have both reward and threat in the same incentive structure, and that's why money is such a powerful motivator, is the environment threatens you if you don't have enough money, and so you desperately need money, and then people who offer enough money, right, can get you to do whatever they want. So that falls under incentivization. And then, of course, internal willpower, or the different types of pathies, right? Psychopathy, sociopathy, right? Psychopaths or sociopaths, in theory, are unable to experience empathy, so pleading with them isn't going to do anything for them on an emotional level. But of course, willpower, right? If you wronged me and, I am so hell-bent on getting revenge on you that I don't care, what damage I do to your family or whatever, right? That would come down to conditioning, right? I'm condition myself or train myself to kind of deal with that aspect. So between those three things, right, those are incentives that are or in training that can overpower a plea towards emotion and morality. Okay, so the counters to this is incentive-based negotiation. Now again, right, your amateur who didn't really think it through, right, this emotional appeal might work for them. But for professionals, incentive-based negotiation is the best way to go. Best example I can give you is if there's a warrant out for your arrest and the police are, knocking on your door to try and arrest you. Telling them that you're a father of 4 and that your family needs you to support them, right? That's going to go on deaf ears. The police aren't going to say, oh, sorry, bro, we'll leave you alone, right? But if you say, hey, I've got credible information on this gang down the block who are human trafficking, right? You let me go, let me off with community service, and I'll tell you everything you need to know, right? Or same thing, if it's a cartel, hey, I know I owe you guys some money, but I know 3 X, Y, and Z who's skimming off the top. You give me a break, I'll tell you, right? So if you have to try to negotiate, make sure it's incentive-based negotiation. Appealing to the humanity of a professional is just not going to work. There's too much indoctrination, too much incentivization working against you. Okay, resistant to pain. So as part of the conditioning, indoctrination, and incentives mentioned previously, professional attackers will fight through pain and actual injury, they will fight through pain and actual injury or death, or the actual threat of either will be necessary to deter them. Okay, some examples again, pressure points, right? If you hit somebody in the pressure points, that whole, well, if you press here, you'll kill somebody, that's phony baloney nonsense. Right? It's just going to cause a lot of pain, and if they are incentivized enough to fight through it and complete their task, they're going to fight through it. Pepper spray is another one. I talk about pepper spray, right? Is a great, well, not great, but it's second place to guns. But the effectiveness is not consistent in pepper spray. Again, right? An amateur or somebody who's not expecting it, you pepper spray them, they might drop to the ground screaming and crying from the pain. But a gang member who's either got to capture you or kill you or is going to get killed themselves, and you pepper spray them, they're going to fight through it, right? Again, the physical chemical will obscure their vision. Getting it in their nose and mouth will affect their breathing, but as far as them dropping to the ground and crying and quitting, it's not going to happen with a professional attacker. Same thing with the hand tasers, right? There's tons of YouTube videos of big guys zapping each other and laughing and, saying ow. But they're not dropping on the ground and convulsing like the air tasers that the police use. So again, these hand tasers, you can get them sometimes as cheap as $10. Evidence shows they're not real weapons. They don't actually incapacitate somebody, they just cause a lot of pain, which might stop somebody who's not really committed to attacking. But again, yeah, all these people saying you can use pain compliance to stop somebody hell-bent on attacking you, not gonna happen. So some counters to this, their resistance to pain is to basically use actual weapons, right? Employ weapons, techniques, and strategies that actually physically neutralize threats regardless of their compliance. So instead of learning how to use pressure points, learning how to choke somebody unconscious is a better tool, right? Instead of relying on a hand taser, right? If you pull a gun on somebody, you're better off pulling a lethal weapon on them and talking them down than using a less lethal weapon that probably won't work. Okay, getting long-winded here, we're almost halfway done. So, effectively fit. While most professional attackers won't have elite levels of fitness, it's a smart tactical bet to assume that they possess at least a functional level of fitness necessary to complete their task. So an example here is going to be active duty Army, and then a prison gang known as, Norteños is a street gang in California and other parts of the U.S., but they're notoriously known in prison to have a very tight, disciplined exercise routine. They make sure they all exercise together. They enforce it on each other if they don't exercise, so they have a very active program that they use to stay fit in jail. So if you're facing off against a Norteño in prison, they're going to be in shape. Right, active duty military, right? They're in shape. They meet their fitness standards. They are fit to get the job done. As you see, there's an absence of police here. I don't know why, but at least in this country, police just do not have good fitness standards. So there are actually quite a few cops out there that do not meet, who are not effectively fit. But ones who take their job seriously are. So what are the counters for this? Attain and maintain a fitness level significantly above what is necessary to complete your task. You can't be too fit. Adopt a fitness routine that is centered around practical effectiveness. So this is a huge point right here, right? Again, combat, you need cardio, you do need a degree of strength. Really, strength is better to resist from injuries. You need flexibility, right? You need a diverse, and you, of course, you need specialized muscles specifically for your order of combat, right? But again, general fitness is better, right? Being a bodybuilder and looking good in a certain pose is not practically effective. Getting your body fat down to a single digit so you can see your veins, again, aesthetic, not effective. Having low body fat is terrible for cardio, okay? So make sure your exercise routine is based on your actual ability to fight or do whatever you need to do versus just looking good. And of course, all right, last point here, never rely on your opponent's lack of fitness, okay? Don't just think because you're an athlete that you can just outrun everybody, or you know that you're a big strong man like me and I can just muscle my way out of everybody. There's always somebody stronger. There's always somebody in better shape than you. No matter who you are, there's somebody in better shape than you out there. Okay, partial training, right? They're partially trained. So as part of common sense, any professional attacker will have at least basic training in the use of physical technique and the tools required to complete their task. Similar with fitness, elite proficiency will be rare, but expecting less than moderate proficiency is foolish. Okay, so again, police, military, specialized martial arts, right? So again, police, right? You're not gonna see any cops holding their guns like this. They know how to use their guns, they know how to use their equipment, they know how to use their tasers, they know how to drive, right? Again, very few police officers are elite in any of those or all of those, but they all have at least a moderate to basic level of proficiency in all of their tools. You know, they're not gonna just grab something they've never seen before and try and fucking improvise, you know. Military is an example of kind of lopsided partial training. So one guy trained within Anarchy Arts was a former Army member and or National Guard member, and when I showed him handgun, he had no idea how to fire a handgun because they only showed him how to use rifles in his basic level of training. I think he was reserve. But the point being is they only taught him how to use just enough equipment to fulfill his role. Right, I haven't met any ex-military personnel that have any knife training. They carry knives, but no military personnel I've ever talked to have significant training in just like basic slashing and use of a knife as a weapon. So again, they're trained enough to get the job done, but they're not fully trained. And of course, right, specialized martial arts training, right, going back to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're gonna be a damn good grappler, not so much striking, and if, again, all you do is spend your time on the mats, you're not gonna be good at shooting guns, using knives, etc., etc. So of course, counters to this, engage in frequent and diverse training to cover multiple aspects of combat. Prioritize diversity over specialization. This is a big key because it's very easy to get good at something and you get comfortable with it and you like doing it because it feels good to do it, and then you try something new, right? You're really good at jiu-jitsu, you try to pick up a handgun and you just can't hit shit the first 3 times you go out. It's really easy to go back to jiu-jitsu because it feels good and it's comfortable, and kind of let the shooting go by the wayside or vice versa. Right, you're a really good shooter, but you get on the jiu-jitsu mats and you're out of shape, you get winded, and you just go back to shooting. It's very important to be diverse, right? It's better to be a jack of all trades, right, than to be a master of one. And then of course, never assume your opponent is untrained. There are some phony baloney martial arts out there, you know, we assume your opponent's bigger, stronger, and faster, but doesn't know how to fight. Well, you know, martial arts and combat training is a lot more common today than it used to be. You know, the UFC's out there, everybody's at least seen that. So to assume that you're fighting somebody who's never trained ever is really stupid, and it's a really stupid thing to rely on. Okay, adequately equipped, right? Professional attackers are going to be adequately equipped. Pretty much the same thing as training, but you know, this is the tool rather than the skill to use the tool, right? It's part of common sense. You know, professional attackers that premeditate their actions, research the correct and necessary equipment for their actions, and procure it before completing their actions, right? So people who do the research are probably going to be adequately equipped. Okay, right? Again, weapons, armor, specialized tools, vehicles, right? They're going to have all of these. They're going to be well maintained. You know, again, they're going to be trained in how to use them, right? Basic shit here, right? Common sense. Okay, counters. Make sure you have adequate and diverse equipment to complete your task. Again, right? You want diversity here too. You know, you might have to fight people who have vehicles. You might have to fight people who have armor. You might have to fight people who have bare hands. You might have to fight people who outnumber you, right? You just want diversity here, right? You want to be able to cover a lot of different situations. Make sure you maintain the equipment, and of course, never assume your opposition lacks reasonable equipment. So reasonable. Example is one job I'm doing right now. I do armed escort for big rigs, and you know, people try to steal the cigarettes. So if you look at like YouTube videos or World Star Hip Hop videos of the people who do the robbing in the Bay Area, right? It's usually a driver, one dude hops out with just a pistol, and then 2 or 3 other guys hop out and grab shit, right? For me to assume that only one guy has a gun and that the other 5 couldn't get guns, or that it's just going to be a pistol and not an AK or a shotgun, that would be stupid of me to assume, right? People have access to all those tools. So that's where I say reasonable equipment. It would be reasonable for me to expect multiple people with guns, you know, trying to surround me with, again, rifles, shotguns, multiple types of weapons. Now, if they pull up in an APC and hop out with a rocket launcher, you know, yeah, if I fail to account for that, that's reasonable, right? It'd be unreasonable for somebody to bring, you know, $80,000 worth of equipment to try and steal a couple grand worth of cigarettes, right? It doesn't make any sense. Okay, resistant to retreat. So as part of the conditioning, indoctrination, and incentive mentioned earlier, professional attackers are far more likely to call a bluff than amateur attackers, and the threat of violence or retaliation will probably not be enough to deter them. Okay, so some examples of some counter deterrents, right? You want to scare them off, but some things that would scare them even more is court-martialing, right? If you're in the military and you're ordered to raid a building and capture somebody, and the people in the building say, you know, if you do that, we'll kill you and skin any survivors alive, right? Well, if you retreat and you disobey an order, you get court-martialed for deserting and disobeying an order. You go to military prison. You lose the ability, you lose your freedom, and you lose your ability to provide for yourself and your family, right? Or same thing if you're a cop, right? Dereliction of duty. You're ordered to go in a house and serve a warrant, but they threaten that they'll find your family and kill you if you do, or kill them if you do. And you back off and, right, you don't go in and you disobey, right? Dereliction of duty, you lose your job, you can go to jail. And then, of course, right, gang-related punishments. If you're a gang member and you're ordered to go capture or kill somebody who owes the gang money, and you get scared because they threatened you, yeah, right, you're going to get, you know, part of your finger cut off, you're going to get killed, right? Bad things are going to happen from the gang. So again, there's a lot of counter incentives that professional attackers have pushing them to attack you, so threatening them probably ain't going to be enough. You're probably going to have to, you know, now if you shoot and injure 4 or 5 of them, or, you know, make it clear that they can't beat you and actually, you know, make good on your threat, which is probably what I say right here. Yeah, physical demonstration of your willingness to complete your task gives you the best chance of deterrence, right? You actually shoot a couple of them, you actually fight a couple, right? 3 guys are showing up to jump you and you actually break one of their nose and then tell them to leave. You have a better chance of getting deterrence. But of course, as always, never ever rely on retreat or surrender for victory. If your only path to victory in a situation is relying on your opponent to quit, you have a terrible strategy, and you are not adequately prepared with all these other factors I talked about in this lecture and in other Anarchy Arts lectures. Okay, the last one, which is actually a benefit to the defender, is that professional attackers have a commitment to their objective. So the true hallmark of any professional is prioritizing their objective over personal feelings and bias. This is actually an advantage for the defending entity so long as they understand that objective fully. That is a key point. You need to know exactly what they want. Okay, so example here is, you know, I'm going to go to the next slide and I'll come back and use these examples. So counters to this, right? Deterrence is highly effective in non-specific scenarios. So human trafficking, right? Human trafficker, right? The advantage you have is if human traffickers are out to get you, they're very rarely out to get you specifically. They're out for, young girls who fit your description or similar. So if you're walking down the street and you have a handgun and 5 human traffickers hop out of the van with guns and you draw your handgun, it is in their incentive to hop back in the van and go down the block and find another, right? Again, you're non-specific, right? To find an easier target that doesn't have a gun. Even though all 5 of them could easily beat you in a shootout, right? It's not worth one of them getting shot. It's not worth damage to the van. It's just not worth, trying to evade police with a bullet hole or a broken window. It's just not worth it, right? Incentively, right? It is a better incentive to their objective to not, get any damage and to go find an easier target. Okay, in specific scenarios, excessive casualties and loss can be avoided with careful compliance. So again, let's talk about like robbery, right, or military objectives, right? Let's say there's some robbers and they're after a safe you have in your office, right? If you're okay with them stealing the safe and you want to protect your family, right? Well, okay, they want the safe, right? I'll position the safe somewhere in the house where they can break in the front door or the back door and get to the safe without having to go, through my family or through myself, right? That it would be an inconvenience for them and a distraction from the objective for them to come after me and my family, right? Or same thing with the military objective. If you know that, the enemy army wants to blow up your ammunition depot and you know that they're coming, right? If you evacuate and get everybody to a safe distance, they're probably not going to turn their planes to try and kill the civilians too. They're probably only going to go for the military objective. But of course, understanding their objective fully makes it easy, if you don't want to comply, to set traps and counterattacks, right? If your safe is in a room in the house, and I'm going to get a little Looney Tunes here, right? But you can put trapdoors in the floors or, rig explosives to it, or poison gas comes out of the safe. Again, right, I'm being ridiculous, right? But if you know that's their objective, you can effectively set a trap or a counterattack, right? If I know an enemy army wants to capture, a strategic point I have, maybe I, make it look like the guards are very weak. So they think they can just come up and take it, and then surprise, there's 10 times the guards, or there's a minefield. Or again, I bury some armor under some trees or some leaves, and that way it doesn't look like there's anything there, or it looks like it's abandoned, and they come to take it, surprise, they're surrounded by tanks, right? So, takeaways and conclusions. A long-winded lecture, longest one I've ever done. So engage in common sense-based training and conditioning. Again, right, so that's the big key here, right, is that professional attackers, they use common sense, they train based on common sense, they practice based on common sense, and of course they have conditioning based on what they need to do. They take their objective seriously, they fully prepare for it. So as I said, your training needs to be based in common sense. Right? If you're learning martial arts or shooting or any fucking form of defense or violence, make sure your instructors, or at least your curriculum, addresses for counters, right? Don't go to these guys who, show you a throw and it's just grab, step, and okay, repeat that 10,000 times and you're a master. No, what if I go to step and they step away, right? I need to have a counter for that. I need to know when the throw is no longer feasible and to abandon it, right? So make sure your instructors are actually talking about counters and not just trying to get you to do one move repetitively or, sell you some comfort or some shit. Make sure it's actual common sense training and it's diverse and it goes over a lot of different things. Have empathy. And not just being a decent person, but have empathy, right? One thing about common sense is put yourself in the mind of the attacker. Again, that's one thing I pride Anarchy Arts and myself on being different. I cover combat from offense and defense. It's not just pure defense and don't get in trouble. It's, hey, maybe you decide you need to go on offense, right? That's part of justice, right? You can stop one act of injustice with defense, but if you want to stop a system of injustice, you have to go on offense. That's just a fact of reality, right? But again, have empathy. Put yourself in your attacker's shoes, right? You know what I'm saying? You want to know, well, how would I deter somebody from robbing me, right? Well, put yourself in the robber's mind. What would you want when you're robbing, right? If you're out looking for somebody to rob, are you going to look for a group of 5 buff dudes who are paying attention to their surroundings? Or are you going to look for, a small, alone female with earbuds on and her, face in her phone, right? Well, okay. So do you want to have your earbuds on and your face in your phone, right? So again, have empathy and try to train with people who, again, cover both sides, right? Try to train with instructors who tell you, okay, here's how you attack and defend in this situation so that you can understand both. And the last one is have a commitment to your own objectives. Be a professional in your own right. So this one is really more about staying out of trouble. And let me use an example here. So let's say you're living in cartel territory in some country, right? And all your neighbors and everybody kind of talks bad about the cartel on social media and they go to protest for cartels, right? Now again, is your objective in life to rid your neighborhood of cartels? Because if it is, hey, more power to you. Go to the protest, but again, right, make sure you're actively trained and equipped and ready to deal with the consequences, right? But if your goal in life is just to, make a living and, give your kids a good life, probably not a good idea to go to that protest, right? So again, it's important to have that self-reflection and realize what are my goals in life and how do I get there? And to only really do activities that further that goal and avoid any activities that would deter you from that goal, right? Like going out getting drunk or getting mixed up with the wrong crowd. Or again, hanging out with the wrong people. You know what I mean? Hanging out with people who are a distraction or an obstacle to that path. I know they're your brother or your friend or your sister or somebody and you want to hang out with them, but if they're detrimental to you reaching your objective, cut them off, right? If the activity puts you in danger of completing your objective, don't do it. Again, if you want to do something dangerous or controversial, I'm not here to judge, but make sure you know what you want to, what you want to complete, what your task is, what your objective is. Draw a clear path to it and avoid things that are going to be obstacles or roadblocks on that path, right? So if you can stick to completing your objective in life, you can minimize the amount of distractions and trouble you can get into and minimize the engagement you're going to have with professional attackers. Of course, unless your plan is to face professional attackers head on. Whew, super long lecture, but finally that's it.